Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Occupation Story Hub. Today we have an 11-year Air Force veteran with us who's a helicopter pilot. And so, Lee, if you don't mind introducing yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, and we'll get into your career in the Air Force.
Sure. Yeah. So Lee Roscop, like Anthony said, I served in the Air Force for 11 years as a helicopter pilot. So after that, was able to get on with a helicopter manufacturer for a few years, working in flight safety, and then I've been with the Federal Aviation Administration for the last 16 years, also working in helicopter safety. So I was able to sort of parlay the career from the military to outside in the industry, working helicopter manufacturer safety, and then now to the FAA on the regulator side.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's just get going. What year did you decide you wanted to go into the Air Force?
So I graduated from high school in 1991, and I think it was around 1989, 1990 timeframe that I started thinking about it. And I went to a small high school, rural Colorado. I graduated in class like 70 people, so it was tiny. But for whatever reason, we had a number of guys that went into the military. And of those, there were some that went into the service academies, Naval Academy and Air Force Academy. Some of those guys were like 5 or 6 years ahead of me, and you'd read it in the yearbook. Well, this sounds pretty interesting, And then there was a guy that was a year ahead of me that went to the Air Force Academy, and of course, I was getting to the point where I needed to make college decisions and what I'm going to do after I graduate from high school, and how's that going to work out? And just started looking into it more, and thought, this is interesting to me because I grew up in the era where, Star Wars was brand new, 1977, 81, 83, when the second and third movies came out. Space was still, it was still a really cool uh, thing back then. First space shuttle launch, I think, was like 1981. I remember being in second grade, and there was just a lot of imagination still, I think, towards space, towards flight, towards aviation, that sort of thing. And that had always kind of captured my imagination, intrigued me. And so I think my later high school years, they were starting on like construction of the first space station. I was like, man, that seems like it'd be a really cool career to get into one way or another, whether it was being an astronaut or being a pilot or some way, shape, or form. So that really got me to we had an independent study class we could take in high school. So I took aviation and aerospace as an independent study class. So just kind of studying principles of flight and how aerodynamics worked and that sort of thing. And then just started when I was a junior in high school, pursuing the path to get into the Air Force Academy in order to really start down the military career.
Oh, that's interesting. So, and what is that path like? I mean, I come from the enlisted side, so that world is very foreign to me. So, what does that look like for somebody wanting to go down that path?
Yeah, so there are a couple different options. If you want to go down the officer route, you can go to a service academy. So you have Air Force Academy, Naval Academy, you have West Point for the Army, you have a Merchant Marine Academy. There's a Coast Guard Academy. You can go, you can apply to the academies, and the way you do that is you apply to the school itself, but then you also have to get a nomination from either a congressperson or a senator or the vice president, and they will nominate you. There will be, I think, 10 spots each one of them has for nominations. You compete with those 10 other folks to get basically accepted into the school. So they look at everything. They're really looking at like well-rounded folks in terms of uh, yes, they want you to have done well academically, but did you participate in sports? I mean, it wasn't. You don't even have to be this all state, 4 years in a row kind of athlete. Did you participate in clubs? How did you have leadership positions in those clubs? Were you a Boy Scout? What did you do for community service? So they're really looking for well-rounded folks that have demonstrated leadership capability and potential in junior high and high school and that sort of thing, and commitment to various activities. So that's one route, as a service academy route. You could also many colleges have Reserve Officer Training Corps, ROTC. So you would apply for those programs, and you go to school at the regular college, but at the same time, you're working towards your commission as an officer as well. So at the end of both those paths, you'll get a commission as an officer, as for either from the Service Academy or going the ROTC route, officer training school, officer candidate school, and that usually is a shorter course. But a lot of times that will be reserved for folks that they were already enlisted, and then they just go through 90 days or so of training to learn things about officership. But they're ones that a lot of times they've already been down that road of knowing what the military is like, that sort of thing. Then
Gotcha.
like doctors and lawyers are sort of their own, they have their own path. There are also ones that a lot of times will go through a shorter amount of training course, and they already have their professional degrees by the time they get into that. So it's not like an ROTC program where you have 4 years of training, or a service academy where you have 4 years of training.
And so you had expressed an interest in aviation. Was
Mhm.
that specifically you wanted to go fly jets, or when did you decide what type of aircraft you want to fly?
Yeah, so I didn't really know at first what it was going to look like because, like my aviation background, neither of my parents were pilots. I didn't have relatives who were pilots. I'd never even been on a commercial airplane until I was at the Air Force Academy. So my experience was seeing crop dusters at our around our place where we lived, spraying the cornfields and the beet fields and bean fields and all that sort of thing. Flight for Life was a big thing. When we'd see helicopters, that was usually when we would see them. We'd see the orange helicopter that would be flying over the town, getting somewhere, going out to a highway or something to pick up somebody when a crash had occurred. When I was first went to the Air Force Academy, I mean, I was dreaming big. I was thinking, "Oh, I think I might want to be an astronaut."
Wow, that is big.
It kind of crashes in, like once you get in the environment and you're around a bunch of people that have, they're all very bright, and then the academic demands of going certain career fields start to become reality. You're like, wow, I don't know if that's the route. So I don't know that it really clicked on what exactly I wanted to do in terms of what aircraft to fly until I actually was in pilot training. And even then, I remember thinking while I was there in the early part of pilot training, like the first 6 months, everybody was flying the same jets. It's a
Okay.
little jet plane called the T-37 Tweet, and it was called the Tweet because it sounded like a dog whistle, like the engines and stuff. I was taxiing out to the runway to take off and stuff. So we're going through that training, and everybody's like trying to figure out, do I want to fly fighters? Do I want to fly transports? Well, do I want to fly helicopters? Well, helicopters pretty much picked me because about halfway through the program, they split people out, and helicopters was what I got, had it was available, assigned for
Oh,
me.
so they just assigned it to you?
Yeah, and so it was based on order in the class, and honestly, for my first 6 months of pilot training, full disclosure, it was a mighty struggle. I mean, I was hanging in there at times. I felt like by the skin of my teeth. Very, very demanding environment, and um, for me, I think it was one of those times in life where God has times where you're in peaks and valleys. This was definitely a valley for me because I was not used to doing something and not doing it very well. And my first several months of Air Force pilot training, I was not doing it very well. I mean, I was giving it my all, and I was doing the best that I could, but things were just not clicking great for me. And so the way they do the order of things is they all your performance kind of adds up to where you rank ordered. And for me, like helicopter was the only option. Other people had more options than that. It wasn't that I hadn't thought of helicopters before, but it it was one of those where I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point in time. Some people were like, "Man, day one, they were going to be a fighter pilot, and that was it." Some people, yeah, all I want to do is fly cargo planes. That was it. I didn't really know. So, like I said, helicopters ended up picking me, and I'm so grateful for that because my next 6 months of pilot training, learning to fly helicopters, was so much better in so many ways than my first 6 months. I don't know if it just was my learning curve catching up, or if it was just more of a natural fit for me, but I did much better at it, and I enjoyed it a lot more. So that was really a blessing in the way that that worked out.
That's really cool. That's really cool. So, you graduate high school, you get accepted to academy.
Mhm.
What was the academy like?
So it was very demanding. It was an exercise or an experiment in sleep deprivation. I felt like for 4 years because there was always too much to do and not enough time to do it.
That's the
I
military
think
in general, right?
right, yeah, exactly. I think part of the drill is they're teaching you how to prioritize things because you can't do everything. So you need to know what things do I need to do right now, what things do I need to do next, what things need to be put on the back burner, and they were constantly challenging you. The pillars that they had there were um, character, academics, athletics, and military, and each one of those would be pulling you in one direction, at the same time. So you just had to you had to work on that balance between those things because if you focus too much on school, well, you could fill out militarily. If you tried to cut corners on character, well, you could get kicked out for character reasons. If you let yourself just kind of go athletically, well, you weren't going to pass the physical fitness test. You could get kicked out for that. So there were a number of ways that you could do it wrong, and they were really trying to make sure that you balance doing all of those things. Maybe not the best you can do could do in one individual area, but doing the best you could at all those areas, knowing that you couldn't do perfectly in all of them at the same time.
That's interesting. I mean, it makes you think about when you see, someone in uniform. There's a lot more that be in behind the scenes that people don't think about that person had to go through, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's I mean, and that's on all sides. I mean, I'm talking from the officer perspective. Obviously, you know from the enlisted perspective, the amount of training that goes in for every different career field to be able to become not just competent, but to excel at your particular task and discipline. There's a lot of story behind the story that gets folks there. Unfortunately, it's not always a fit for a person, and people wash out of training and they end up going to other career fields and that kind of thing. I mean, there's no shame in that. It just sometimes it just isn't a match, and sometimes again, I think it can be a great blessing because maybe this wasn't a fit, but the area you end up going into ends up being a great fit. The person
Yeah.
ends up excelling at that, and then when they get out, they have these transferable skills from the military to the civilian sector that they can leverage and use to get job and pursue a rewarding career on that side as well. So
Yeah, it's interesting. We can make all these plans, but it's God who has the final say.
that's right.
And so
Yes, that's
we
right.
never know where we're going to end up.
Yes, yes. He
Um,
definitely orders the steps.
yeah, yeah, that's for sure. What would you say was the most demanding part of the academy and or pilot training, or both?
I would say pilot training because it was a condensed 1 year experience. I mean, you're getting through a 1 year period. That's it. Either you're getting through, or you're not not getting through, sort of thing. And it was just a fire hose of whether it be the academic knowledge, the technical skill of just the hands and feet of flying an aircraft, the the pressure of check rides and evaluations and tests and that sort of thing. And then it was just like the day in day out grind of that, right? That you get to Friday and you're like, whew, all right, I made it to the weekend. Time to do laundry. Maybe cook some meals in preparation for the next week. And Monday always comes. So you got to be ready
Quick.
for. Yeah, that's right. So I'd say definitely pilot training. That was probably the most difficult thing that I've ever done in my life, even compared to the academy and compared to getting a master's degree, all that sort of thing. That 1 year pilot training was by far the most intense.
Wow, wow. I'm assuming that's why. Is this true that to go through the academy, they is a prerequisite you cannot be married?
Right, right. As a cadet, you can't be married. So I mean, there's uh, ladies and guys that get married, the week after graduation, but at the academy, you can't be married. So, and everybody
Yeah, I expect.
lives in the dorms all 4 years. So,
Wow, I
yeah,
expect that reason is because there's no way you can keep up with the demand of the academy if your head's not 100%.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's I just I don't know what that would even look like just because the amount of focus that it required and the demands that you're going through day in, day out. Um, I think I would have been a terrible spouse, even if it was allowed, just because you're just it's from one thing to the next. So there's no real time
yeah,
to
yeah,
really invest the way in your wife, or if you had kids, your kids the way that you would want to. So yeah, that was probably by design. They're kind of protecting us from ourselves in that.
yeah. I mean that makes a lot of sense. Um, what was your first? And you mentioned your first ride in the jet earlier. What was that like? Was it everything you expected?
It was cool. It was also intimidating because you realize you get in, you see all these. You've had simulator rides and you practiced on these training devices and gone through these checklists and all these things, but it's the real deal. You know, you're you're out there, you're going to be taken off, and you just think to yourself, "Wow, I'm supposed to be flying this aircraft solo in X number of flights, sort of thing. How is this going to happen? This is going to be a
Yeah,
miracle, right?" But it's one of those things where it's just a little bit at a time. You learn one skill, and then that builds on learning another skill, and learns another skill, and then eventually that you're there. So that by the time you get to the end, you don't even realize all the different ways that you've been changed through the training
mm,
over this course of these very small things that have happened. I mean, it's a lot of ways. I guess I can equate it to like our journey in following Jesus is where over time, he's sanctifying us a little bit at a time, and sometimes in ways we don't even know or don't even see. But those each one of those individual experiences is taking you along on that journey. And I think on kind of a micro level, that's sort of what I would equate uh, training to, because the very first flight for either a jet and helicopter was even worse because I remember getting in that and out there with the instructor, and he was demonstrating something called an auto rotation, which is where
I
he
know about
takes
that.
yeah, the way it works is he rolls the power down on the throttle, so the engine is no longer powering the rotor blades. What's powering the rotor blades is the relative wind that is going through the rotor blades, and it feels a lot like that first big hill down on a roller coaster where your gut just kind of kind of comes up to your throat, sort of thing. And I remember we were buddied up for this ride where I had a training partner and there's an instructor pilot. So I was sitting in the back for the first time we did one of those, and I remember thinking to myself, "You cannot be serious. There is no way." And then, the instructor, of course, makes it look easy. He's talking through everything. And, you're like going towards the ground at 1,500 feet per minute. And then all of a sudden at the bottom, he flares the aircraft. All the energy, builds into the rotor system, and just he parks the thing like you were under full power the whole time. And
Yeah.
you're thinking to yourself, I'm expected to be able to do that. That's impossible. Never going to happen. Right.
So I
But
had
it
a
does.
buddy,
Yeah.
when I was on deployment on the ship, he, was the air crewman. So he would whenever we would do flight ops, they'd have to have a bird in the air, SH-60, a search and rescue helicopter. And so, we're working out one day in the gym, and he's like, "Hey, you wanna go for a I wanna go for a flight?" I was excited to go.
Mhm.
So they got me on the manifest, and we take off on the just making circles around the strike group while they're doing flight ops. And, they did one of those maneuvers, and I didn't know what was coming. And so, I mean, obviously, they're messing with me, and, um, they just as you explained, I can't explain what they did, but we just start falling.
Yeah.
And, it feels like I'm on a roller coaster, and I didn't know we were supposed to do that.
Right.
All of a sudden, we're flying normal, and then we kinda, like, go to, like, a stop, and then we just drop. And it felt like we hit the ground, and then we do it again, and then we do it again.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What's going on?" They're laughing at
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
Then they explained to me later what they were doing.
Right. Well, and that there were so many fun things with flying helicopters and learning how to fly them, and then transferring that to missions out in the Air Force. So got to fly on night vision goggles. That was super cool being able to do that. And once you've flown on with them, you never want to fly without them because there's you can just see so much more. It sounds like the most
Yeah.
obvious statement in the world, but
Does it mess with your depth perception though?
yeah. So that is one of the things that you have to be very deliberate about. Looking out to, your right or your left, and not just fixating on one spot, because you're down to this. At least at the time that I was flying, it was basically a 40-degree field of view. So just you got the binocular like set up there, and you're used to a 120-degree field of view. And there's so many visual cues that we get from our peripheral vision that we don't
Yeah.
even we take for granted, except when they're not there. So
Right.
that was one of the things that we were taught, was just deliberate head turning, but you don't want to be like, snapping your neck left and right, because you can get disoriented from that. So yeah, there were a lot of things where you had to be just cognizant of, okay, even though you've got these night vision goggles on, and they're an aid, they're a helper. It's still not like day vision where you have all the cues and that sort of things. So that, yeah, that was a great thing to learn, and we used that a ton once I got out into the operational world. Was used for search and rescue. Was used when we were going to medevac people, that sort of thing. We always had crews that were on alert at night in case there was some kind of short notice security issue that came up where we had to mobilize folks. So yeah, all those things were valuable.
Would so you were you in during the post 9/11 era?
I was. So I went through training in 1996 into about well, I guess middle to late 1997 by the time. So I did 6 months in jets, 6 months learning to fly helicopters, and then another 3 months of ending up in the helicopter that I was going to be assigned to at my first full operational unit. So I got there, I guess, in 1997, and that was in Cheyenne, Wyoming, flying support for the primary mission. There was support for the ICBMs, the nukes
Okay.
that are
Mhm.
positioned in various bases in the U.S. And so there was that piece of it. We also had a secondary mission of search and rescue, and also medevac, and then things like VIP transport. We flew a lot of generals. It seemed like came to that base, so that was not an irregular thing to have to fly generals, not only from the U.S. Armed Services, but also from foreign militaries as well, because they would be visiting with some of the U.S. generals. So it was those sorts of things. And then when 9/11 happened, I was actually an instructor pilot at Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico, and I just that was so bizarre when that happened, because I remember I was supposed to fly a night vision goggle flight that night, and somebody called me. I was trying to sleep in, because usually those flights we didn't wrap up until wee hours in the morning. By the time you got home, it was like 3 o'clock or so in the morning. So I was sleeping in. Phone rings, and somebody said, "Hey, I think our flight's canceled tonight." I'm like, "Oh, what happened? Problem with the aircraft or whatever?" He's like, "Yeah, you need to turn on your TV." And so I looked, and I'm like, "Oh man, everything just changed." Everything just changed. So that was crazy.
Did that have an impact on your operations as far as, like, getting deployed or anything like that?
So I didn't, because the platform I was in was it was only used in the continental U.S., and then there was
Okay,
one overseas base at Yokota Air Base in Japan. But we were in a squadron with H-60 pilots, and those guys did rotate onto deployments. Our primary thing was still to get people through the pipeline through the training school, so they couldn't send everybody, because then you don't have people that are training, the next line to go out. But we usually had, I think, one or two crews from the H-60 side of the squadron that were out at a time, that were supporting, the post 9/11
gotcha.
global war on terror. So
Yeah, I came in 2003,
okay,
and so right when I came in, we had just declared, um, um, the global war on terrorism, right?
hmm
GWAT, and so I always like to ask the question how it was like pre 9/11, post 9/11, because I came in post 9/11, so that's all I knew. I know
yeah,
some folks say it was a lot different.
yeah. I think it was just really. a heightened vigilance and awareness just because it was so unprecedented, had never happened before, and everybody was like, "Wow, this." I mean, when you get hit on your home turf, that is just that's way different and way more real and personal. And so, again, I think it just let everybody know, hey, we're going to be in this, and we may be in this for a while until this enemy is defeated. And the fact that at least nobody at my level saw it coming, it was a complete surprise, is I think one
Yeah.
more thing you sort of just had to shake off the shock factor on. Wow, this just happened.
Yeah, I think I was a senior in high school when that happened. It was something else, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, what lessons from training, either in the academy or pilot school, do you still find yourself using today?
Wow. It's funny how the benefit of additional years of life like make you reflect on those things. And at the time, maybe you didn't know that it was going to be as useful. Some things were going to be as useful as they turn out being. But so I think of things about like being able to be prepared for flights. There's a lot of way. I think we talked about this a little bit. There's a lot of preparation that goes into to every flight, whether that be what route you're flying, when there's certain activities that need to happen, how much fuel you have to do the mission, what's the weather like, if the weather starts to go bad, what is going to be our alternate plan. So basically, thinking through risk management and all right,
Sure.
if this doesn't work, what is the plan, and when do we just need to say, okay, we gave it a good shot, but today's not our day. We need to go back because it's the safe thing to do. So definitely the risk management piece, the be prepared piece. Um, I had to do a lot of briefings as the pilot in command of of whether it be a single ship operation or formation operations, and you didn't really think about that as public speaking, but it was.
Yeah.
And well, I have to do a fair amount of public speaking in my job with the FAA, talking, conveying different safety messages to helicopter pilots and mechanics and industry organizations. And so that was a great way to get a lot of practice in just having to talk in front of people. Was when you had to do briefings before every single flight, and then the whole exercise after a flight of debriefing on, hey, what went wrong? What went right? What would we change if we could go back and change? What could we do better next time? So it's really that whole feedback loop. And I think that's a good practice, just not just for work life, but just for life in general on, hey, if I
Yeah.
had that to do over again, why I do it the same way, or would I do it different? And then I think discipline is a big one because there's ways to do you can get to the finish line a bunch of different ways, but some of them you shouldn't do because the rules say that you shouldn't, and the rules are there for a reason, kind of thing. So just knowing um okay, when to do what, and to be disciplined about, okay, yeah, we can't do that. That's not what we do. That's not how we do it. Sticking to the process.
No, that's good. That's good. Those are all, I mean, good life skills. You can, apply to family, like
Yes.
you mentioned. No, that's interesting. Is there any missions or anything that really stood out to you that really tested you while you were in?
So it's interesting. I think the kind of immediate knee jerk answer would tend to be towards, oh, there was a search and rescue mission, or there was this medevac, or there was this low level security mission that we did. But believe it or not, the stories that stick out to me are when I was an instructor pilot, dedicated instructor pilot, when I was in New Mexico. And the reason that they stood out to me is I think that was the most rewarding assignment I had, because you got to see people develop. You have people that on their first flight, they're struggling, and then by their 10th, 11th, 12th flight or whatever, they get it, and you get to see that light bulb go on, and it was just so rewarding to watch that development, and people in that whole learning process, and to I mean, they're doing it, but you get the privilege of being part of that, and
Sure.
helping them on that journey. So that was great, and there were a couple times, and nobody meant to do this, and I was the same when I was a student too. Like, if you don't intervene, the aircraft is gonna crash. They're not trying to make it crash, but
Yeah.
it's just that it's kinda like teaching your kids how to drive a car. They don't even know what dangerous looks like because they don't have the experience yet, and there's times where you can see something developing. You're like, if it gets to this point, I have to intervene. I have no choice but to physically intervene, or we are going down. So that happened a few times, and it, raises your heart rate, of course. But at the end of it, you're like, okay, well, we survived to fly another day, and those lessons would really like burn like hot into people's mind. Like they remembered that. It'd be 10 years later and they'd be like, hey, remember when we were on such and such flight and that happened? I never did that again.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I remember when we were coming, that little flight op I went on, right? So taking off from the ship is easy, but you gotta land back on the ship. And so I never experienced that before. And so we come alongside the ship and the ship's moving in the water. And so it was almost like we're trying to get into a jump rope game. We're just waiting for the right time. And the helicopter's like, no, we can't do it. And so I'm gripping like, oh man, and then all of a sudden he just sits us down super hard. But you gotta do what you gotta do, right?
yeah, it's so funny to listen to you talk through that, Anthony, because when I was Cheyenne, and you and I have a mutual friend who's made fun of me for talking about how windy Cheyenne was, but it really was. Um, And so the mechanics on windy days, they would stand out there and they'd watch us. You try to land the helicopter, and I mean, you're just arm wrestling this thing, trying to get it to the ground because the wind's gusting, and you're like, oh man. And so anyway, you would end up logging about you know 8 or 9 landings for the price of one because you're like, bump, 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 and it's finally down on the ground. And of course, all the mechanics are standing up against the hangar making
You're
fun
like,
of you, and you're
thanks.
like, "Hey,
Now I gotta
man,
go fix
you should
that.
try it. It's hard."
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, we can talk about this. There's so much to talk about. Uh, how was it like? When did you know? Okay, I think it's time for me to get out.
Yeah. So I knew my last assignment was in San Antonio, and what I was doing at that assignment was I was going around to different Air Force bases, and there was an Air Force unit at an Army base in Fort Rucker, Alabama. I think now it's called Fort Novosel. But anyway, I would go out on those trips regularly every 4 to 5 weeks, and at one point in time, I was gone for quite a while, more than a week at a time. And our son was he was really young at that time, just like not even a year and a half old. And I was getting, right there almost at the halfway point to my 20-year mark. And my wife and I were talking about it. And just from a family standpoint, we're like, we want to be in one spot. And we knew
Yeah.
that the military life, as you know, being a veteran, it requires a lot of sacrifice, not just of the service member, but also of the family. Wives have to they have to do a lot as wives of service members and kids as well. And I have plenty of friends and former colleagues in arms who, yeah, they went 20 years plus, and it worked out great for their families and everything. But for us, we just thought that the right decision for us was to get out, lay down roots somewhere where our son could basically go to the same school all the way through, and for us to have just a much more stable, predictable kind of lifestyle. So that's when I knew, and it was one of those where I didn't want to continue serving for the wrong reasons. Like from a money standpoint, it would have been a better thing for me to stay in because from retirement to I was eligible for a pilot retention bonus, all these things, and I had a couple people tell me, "Man, you're nuts to get out." I said, "Well, it never was about the money, and I don't want it to be about the money now. It's about service to the country, it's about taking care of my family, and this is the right decision for us. It was an honor, it was a privilege to serve, but I think it's time for this season to be over. So, but it was gosh, that was a tough call, Anthony, and you probably went through a similar one where I didn't make the decision. My wife and I didn't make that decision like in one night. That was probably 6 months to a year of us talking about it. Almost it seemed like on a weekly basis on a should we, shouldn't we sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's a tough decision because you've you grow accustomed to being in the military. They take care of you so well.
Hmm.
Um, at least on the enlisted side, they kind of put a fear in you, like, "Are you sure you want to get out?" Um, you're gonna have to fend for yourself. I
Yeah.
mean, and so you're like, man, but it is a tough decision.
Yeah.
But
One of those where
it
it's
sounds like
not.
it worked out well for you.
Well, I don't think it's one there's no right or wrong answer to it. It really depends on the person and their family and those sorts of things. So that's why I say I don't look down on anybody who stays in for 20 plus, and I don't look down on anybody who either gets out at 11 years like I did, or somebody who gets out even earlier than that.
Yeah, same. Yeah, same here. Same here. Well, I would love to do a follow-up episode with you, and we can get deeper into life at the academy and what it was like going through SEER training.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yep.
so maybe get into detail on some of your missions if you can talk about them at a high level, and
Sure.
you know if you'd be up for doing something like that, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. I enjoy talking about this again. It was a great season of life. I mean, all seasons of life have their great parts to them. So I was grateful to be able to do this for 11 years, and I can't emphasize enough. And you probably had a similar thing from your time in the Navy, is just the relationships that were built. And I mentioned kind of that valley when I was going through the first 6 months of pilot training. There were guys there who they were doing everything they could to try to, like, help things click with me, different friends. I mean, I could call them out by name because I still remember what
Yeah.
those guys did to try to help things, go smoother and that sort of thing, and made lifelong friends, met some very God-fearing men and women in that profession. Really appreciated them. I knew people that were, they were praying for me when I was on flights, and I was doing likewise for them. So all those things. I mean, it's a great bond.
Yeah, I try to encourage a lot of people, um, do at least one tour in the military if coming out of high school, if you don't really not sure what you want to do. For I mean, there's so many benefits that come with it, but you develop some real true lifelong friends that the camaraderie is there. It's service to country, and I don't know. There's just something about it to where you're glad you did it when it's over, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And just it's bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
There's sacrifice that's involved in it, and I think those are all good life characteristics to learn, so that it helps stave off sort of the me centered existence, which
Yes.
can be a downfall of in a lot of ways. So yeah, very, and it makes you appreciate. I think of the passages in like Romans 12 and First Corinthians as well, where one body, many parts,
Yeah.
sort of thing. You just appreciate, not just me as a pilot. There were flight engineers that were making the flight go well. They're the maintainers. There were those that were tracking the flights to make sure that we were in radio contact and helping us when we had emergencies. There's air traffic control. There's all these people that are part of the team to make this work. And so it gives you that perspective that, hey, everybody has a purpose, everybody is contributing in some way, and that's very powerful. There's a lot of career fields where I don't know that you get to appreciate that as much as you do in the military.
No, that's good. I'm glad you brought that up too. That's something I think about quite a bit, and it's kind of one of the themes of this channel is if we step back and kind of look at all these occupations that make up a function in society, how God's hand is in all of that, um, and bringing it all together so that we can have a life, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And it's just amazing to me how everything comes together,
Yes.
um, not
Yeah.
by
We need them
accident.
all. We need them all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, before we wrap up here, is there anything you'd like to say to maybe someone's considering a career in the military and looking at the academy?
Right. I think the most important thing is to ask questions. Make sure that you know what you're trying to pursue. So whether it's from your high school counselor, or if you have someone that was in the military, and if they happen to go to a service academy, ask them what it was like. It was funny. When you had somebody else who was a service academy graduate from the Air Force Academy that was on our prior episode, I was watching. I was like, wow, he went there more than 20 years before me, and that was the exact same as when I was there,
Oh,
sort of
wow,
thing.
that's pretty
So
cool.
yeah, so it is cool, and so I think the big thing is take initiative, ask questions, so that you can get a good idea of what it is and what it isn't, because you don't want this sort of romanticized version of what it is. You want to know what it is that you're signing up for, and then you can. It also opens your eyes to, oh wow, I didn't know that that opportunity was there, but now I do, kind of thing. And the only way you can do that is through investigating if you have the means to do so, for students in high school, and your family is looking for a trip, go buy one of the service academies, because you can take tours there and that
Oh,
sort of
that's
thing.
interesting.
Yeah, and you can get a feel on, okay, well, this is what the campus is like, and there's different videos and stuff that you can watch there, that can just give you the first sort of introduction of what it's about. And then if if you want to get into flight and you don't choose the military route, there's ways that you can get in by, like, just exploratory flights, they call them, on the civilian side, just to say, hey, I don't know if I really would want to be a pilot or not. Well, sign up for one of these exploratory flights where you can go up with somebody, and if it absolutely totally terrifies you, well, maybe it's not a fit. Or if you get up there and you're like, wow, I mean, this I would want to do this for a living someday, then that's a good way to sort of kind of get those questions answered.
No, that's very cool. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your time and you explaining all this. This was good, and I
Yes, this
look
was really
forward to
fun,
it.
Anthony.
So,
And it's a great thing you're doing here for everybody who's watching. I mean, I wish this resource had been out there when I was in high school and trying to figure out occupations and what different people did. So this is wonderful.
I appreciate that, and I hope it helps one person. It was worth it.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks again, Lee, and thanks for everyone for tuning in. Look forward to the next episode.